On a cold morning, a young black man stood on the edge of the biggest opportunity of his life, his dream job interview. But just moments before reaching it, he witnessed an elderly woman collapse on an empty street after being pushed off a crowded bus. Everyone kept moving except him. Helping her meant risking everything he had worked for, yet walking away meant becoming the kind of person the world already assumed he was. He chose compassion and had no idea who she really was. What happened a few hours later would shake his entire future. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories. Before the world tested him, Jabari was just a young black man trying to keep his life together, balancing responsibility heavier than most people his age would ever understand. Every morning started the same way: the soft creak of the old apartment floor, the chill of another underheated room, and the quiet breathing of his 9-year-old sister Alexis asleep in the next bed. She was the reason he worked overtime, the reason he kept pushing, the reason he believed tomorrow could still be better. Their small place in the south side of the city wasn't much, but it held their memories, some painful, some hopeful, all shaping Jabari into someone who refused to quit. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was trying to build a future worthy of the promise he made to his late father. Alexis will never have to face the same struggles, and today was supposed to be the turning point. His dream job interview, one that could finally lift them out of the cycle of overdue bills and temporary work. He had prepared for weeks, rehearsing responses late into the night after helping Alexis with homework. His suit was secondhand, but cleaned and pressed with pride. Everything was lined up, timed perfectly, planned to the minute. Still, beneath his determination lived a familiar tension, the kind that followed him everywhere. The kind born from growing up knowing that one mistake, one misunderstanding, or one moment of being judged by the color of his skin could take everything away. Jabari knew he had to be twice as prepared, twice as careful, twice as perfect. On the bus ride toward downtown, he tried to calm the rush of nerves. This interview could change everything. Finally, a chance at stability, recognition, and a life Alexis deserved. He was so close. Just a few more miles, a few more minutes. But fate was already waiting for him on that route, and one unexpected moment was about to force him to choose between ambition and compassion, between the future he needed and the humanity he refused to lose. The bus rattled through the morning rush, crowded with workers, students, and people lost in their own worlds. Jabari stood near the back, steadying himself as the vehicle jerked through potholes. His folder-fresh resume, carefully prepared notes, was pressed against his chest like something fragile. He kept checking the time, calculating every minute. He was still early enough, still safe, still on track. But then the energy shifted. At the front of the bus, an elderly woman struggled to stay upright as the driver braked hard. She reached for a pole but missed, her frail body crashing to the floor. A loud thud echoed, followed by a sharp gasp of pain. For a moment, the entire bus fell silent. People looked, blinked, then quietly returned to their screens. No one moved, no one spoke. No one cared. Jabari felt his stomach twist. The bus driver glanced back with irritation, not concern. His voice was cold, dismissive, almost rehearsed. He insisted she had to get off the bus because he wasn't responsible for her fall. He wasn't going to be blamed. He wasn't going to deal with it. Jabari watched the woman try to rise, her hands shaking, her back hunched in agony. The driver didn't offer help. The passengers didn't offer help. All that existed in that moment was an elderly woman being pushed off a bus like she was an inconvenience. And Jabari knew exactly why. He saw the way her pale face contorted at the sight of him later, saw the flicker of fear and judgment, not personal, but conditioned. The same kind he'd felt from strangers all his life. Despite that, watching her dragged into the cold morning alone triggered something deeper, a memory of his father collapsing at work, surrounded by people who didn't bother to help until it was too late. The woman stepped off the bus with great struggle, wincing, limping, nearly falling again. Jabari checked the time. He calculated the cost. Helping her meant missing the interview. Missing the interview meant losing everything he promised Alexis. He had prepared for months. He had sacrificed sleep, food, comfort. He had done everything right. But his conscience refused to stay silent. His heartbeat thundered as he made the decision that could change his life. He called out to the driver to stop, his voice unexpectedly fierce. The driver rolled his eyes but pulled over. Jabari jumped off the bus, sprinting back toward the woman who now sat trembling on the curb. Every step away from the bus felt like running away from his future. Every step toward her felt like running toward something he couldn't name but knew was right. He knelt near her, keeping distance so she wouldn't feel threatened. Her eyes darted up, stunned that someone, especially him, had stopped. The fear faded, replaced by gratitude and shame for ever doubting him. Rain began to fall light at first, then steadily soaking them both. Jabari removed his jacket, draping it over her shoulders, ignoring the chill biting through his shirt. His resume inside his folder curled as raindrops seeped into the edges. Ride-hailing apps were useless. Taxis were unavailable. The street was empty and stretching, and the woman's pain worsened by the minute. He made the choice he'd been avoiding. Call an ambulance. 15 minutes. That's how long it would take. 15 minutes guaranteed the end of his interview, his opportunity, his chance at a new life. But 15 minutes might save hers, so he stayed, on that wet bench, on that cold street, watching his dream shrink further in the distance. The ambulance sirens eventually echoed toward them, but Jabari didn't know that this choice, this moment of compassion, would grip the attention of someone far more powerful than he could ever imagine, and his world was about to shift in ways he never expected. The hospital lights buzzed overhead as Jabari waited, soaking wet, exhausted, and silently grieving the opportunity he knew was already gone. Hours passed, each minute sinking into him like a weight he couldn't shake. He had sacrificed everything he'd prepared for, everything he'd promised Alexis. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to regret helping the elderly woman now lying somewhere beyond the double doors. But the world didn't care about good intentions. It cared about results, and by now, his chance at a stable future was slipping further away. A nurse finally approached him. The woman, her name was Margaret, had a fractured hip and would need surgery. She asked for him. She remembered him. She trusted him. Jabari sat beside her bed, reassuring her, even though inside he felt like his own life was collapsing. He didn't tell her what he had lost. He didn't tell her why this day mattered so much. Compassion wasn't something he needed gratitude for. It was simply the only choice he could live with. But as fate would have it, this moment of peace shattered the second the door swung open. A sharply dressed man entered, stern face, tailored suit, the kind of presence that filled the entire room before he spoke a single word. His eyes widened when he saw his mother injured in the hospital bed. He was the kind of man who wasn't used to losing control. But concern cracked through the polished exterior. Then his gaze shifted to Jabari. For a split second, Jabari saw the man's assumptions forming, the same ones he'd felt from strangers his whole life. The look that questioned his presence, his intentions, his worth. The silent prejudice that followed him everywhere. But before the tension could sharpen, the woman spoke. She told her son, this young man saved her. He stayed when everyone else walked away. The man froze. Something changed. Suspicion faded into realization. He turned to Jabari and thanked him sincerely, deeply, before offering him money for his help. Jabari refused, trying to cling to the dignity he'd built his life around. But behind the man's gratitude, something curious lingered. He kept studying the damp resume folder Jabari had placed on the chair, as though trying to understand how a stranger like him ended up at his mother's side. Jabari didn't know who he was. He didn't know the power he held. He didn't know that this man, this stranger, was the CEO of the very company where Jabari had just missed his interview. And as Jabari walked down the hospital corridor, believing the world had closed its doors on him, the CEO stared at the damaged resume he'd left behind. A resume with the name Jabari Thompson, a name that was about to change everything. 2 days after the hospital incident, Jabari sat at the small kitchen table with Alexis, helping her with homework while silently battling the weight of everything he had lost. He didn't tell her how badly he needed that job. He didn't tell her about the interview he never made. He simply told her he tried his best because that was the only truth he could hold on to. But life sometimes answers sacrifices in unexpected ways. An email arrived the next morning. His missed interview had been rescheduled personally by the CEO of the company, the same man who stood in that hospital room, the same man who had pieced together the truth. Jabari didn't skip the interview. He chose humanity over ambition. In a world that too often punishes black men for even existing, Jabari's act of compassion had finally been seen for what it was. When he walked into the company for the rescheduled interview, everything felt different. The CEO greeted him not as a stranger, but with a quiet respect. He'd learned Jabari's story. He'd read every line of that soaked resume. He'd listened to his mother speak about the young man who refused to walk away. And when Jabari got the job, when he finally called Alexis to tell her their lives were changing, He realized the power of a single moment, a moment where he refused to let the world make him cold, a moment where the prejudice he faced didn't stop him from showing compassion, but the true impact reached beyond him. Because this wasn't just a story of kindness. It was a story about the weight black men carry every day, expected to be perfect, judged before they speak, doubted before they are known. Jabari's journey exposed a truth many live with, but few acknowledge. Sometimes doing the right thing demands more courage from a marginalized man than the world will ever understand. And yet he did it anyway. So the question is this: how many lives could change if more people chose humanity over assumption, compassion over convenience? What would our world look like if we all stopped, just once, to help someone society ignores? If this story touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, eye-opening stories that remind us why kindness still matters.